All right, welcome back, everybody. We've got a big one for you today. It is my absolute pleasure to take you through the just released 8.0 update. I'm not even sure which version I was on when I first started Marvis, but as time has gone on, I've gotten to the point where a new point 0 updated Marvis is on par with Christmas or a birthday. So let's dive in and see what Addy Claus has built out for us here. This update it's all about metadata, metadata, metadata. We're going to begin here with some options on the now playing and mini player screen for displaying pretty much anything we could ever want to see. So let's dive into some of the options that I've personally set up. Opening up the now playing screen here, I've completely changed around what information is displayed for me. There's so much to unpack here. So what I'm going to do actually is go line by line and just kind of show you how I have things set up. The first thing that I've changed is right here under the song title. So you can see that I've consolidated artist and album to be on one line. When I had this first set up, it was kind of hard to tell what was what sometimes if I wasn't super familiar with a band or what album it was. So I've actually added a couple custom symbols here. I got a little group symbol in front of the artist and actually stole that from some super smart person over on Discord. Little shout out for the Discord channel there. And then I've got a record looking thing before the album title. So to get the setup, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the player settings and we are going to head down to displayed metadata right here. So here you can see each row that I have set up. We're going to skip the title row. I didn't really adjust anything on that. And we are going to open up the artist album section right here. And holy cow, there's a lot going on at first glance, but trust me, it gets pretty intuitive when you do break it down. So when you click down here on this add button, now this is going to show you the different types of things you can add to these rows on the screen. So starting with metadata, you're probably familiar with a lot of the stuff that's optional here. This will display whatever piece of information you choose right on that now playing screen. Swiping down and getting rid of that. Text is going to be pretty straightforward. It's just your own text, and I'll show you how I actually use that in a little bit. Symbol right here is how I got the artist and album title. And there's a whole bunch of symbols to choose from, and they are searchable. So that's pretty nice. If you have something in mind, you can see all the different options for what you're looking for from a symbol standpoint. Delete that. Separator is going to be how you can put or remove something between each one of these little pieces of metadata. So keep in mind that the default for the app is to put a little bullet between each one of these line items in the background here. You can get around that, and I did, by adding a blank separator. So that's kind of that. And then the last one is group, and I haven't actually used this yet, but I think that I will in the future. It's a great way to consolidate a bunch of line items and then be able to kind of put those into other sections where you want the same metadata displayed. So it's kind of like a rule group. It's an easier way to organize and consolidate some of this stuff. And this is just so new for me that I haven't really kind of dove in or built a system yet where I've used that. Anyway, back to my setup here. You can see that I started with a symbol and I chose something that looks kind of like a group of people to symbolize an artist. I've got a lot of things you can change on this, from the size and the weight, which is kind of like the boldness of it. You can also do different colors. I kept mine plain right now, but I did use different colors later, which I'll show you later on in the video here. Then after that, I did put a separator in. And the reason why I did this is because I wanted to just leave a blank separator, because I didn't want a bullet in between the symbol and the metadata that comes after it. So just keep that in mind, that if you do want to get rid of that bullet, which is the default that kind of separates out metadata, you can just add a separator and not put anything in there. I'll show you what that looks like. So if you add a separator and just leave it, you can see right here it is just blank, and that'll make a space instead of a bullet. And then just pretty much put in a piece of metadata after that with the artist. Following that, I put in a separator that does have a bullet, and then did the same thing for the album. So symbol, separator, which is a space, and then down here on the bottom we got the album metadata. Let's scoot back over to the now playing screen here and see what else I've got. So the next row I have is just kind of just three pieces of straight metadata. The first is the position and queue, so I can see how many songs are left that I'm going to be listening to. Love this for song mixes, very useful. The next one after that is going to be the year of the song, and then finally the genre. So it's so nice being able to see all this stuff as you're listening to music, just without having to tap anything. It just all shows up right here. So those ones are really straightforward. I will show you just real quickly how those look up. The next one we're going to be looking at, so just three pieces of metadata in a row without having any of my own separators in there. It's just got an automatic bullet between each pieces, just like I talked about. Now on the next one, this is where I got a little bit more creative, I guess, for lack of a better word. These are all related to how a song is integrated into my library. So you can see that what I've got on here, the first item is when I added the song. Then the next item after that bullet point is when I last played it. And then the last one is how many times I have scrobbled it to Last.fm. Now, this last one could just be a play count if you don't use Last.fm like me, but I really like that it consolidates all my listens across the different services I've had since 2005. My iTunes library was also wiped out in 2008, so it lost everything. So this is the most accurate representation of how often I've listened to a song, and I can see it right here on the front screen. So let's take a look at how I set this part up, because I do have some things that change depending on the nature of the metadata. Like I said, this one's a little bit more fun. So we're going to go into this, and you can see that there is a lot more going on here. So up at the top, you can actually, up here, you can see a little preview of what this is going to look like. So just really useful while you're setting this up. You can see where there's bullets or spaces or symbols or things like that. So you can see that I started with a plus symbol. That's for date added. And then after that, I've got a blank separator because I wanted these, the date added plus the symbol to be consolidated. Now after that, you can see that there's two different date addeds. And you may ask, why would you do that? I didn't see two on that main playing screen. The reason that is I want it to display differently based on when the song was added. So if you look at these, we're going to check out some of the options that you have for both of these. For this first one, you can swipe to the left, go here, and you can see the different options right here. So this first one, you can see that I've changed some of the lower options away from automatic. The date format being relative is what gives me 5 days or whatever, kind of distance it's been from today, whether it's 5 months or things like that. So this will show it in that format, how long it's been since I've added this to my library in a relative date situation. The length is another option, and it'll either write out the longer info or shorten it up. So in this case, instead of saying 5 days, it'll say 5D, which is short for days. Now, this is the key right here, is that using these smart conditions, this will signify when to use this specific piece of metadata. If it doesn't meet these rules, it won't display anything at all, which is good because I have two that are kind of mutually exclusive. So what I've done here is for anything that's been added in the last 1 year, I want it to show up as, it's been 3 months or it's been 10 days or things like that. If we look at this other one, and I keep tapping on it instead of swiping to the left, you can see, so we have date format is absolute, length is automatic, so I didn't really mess with that at all. And then up here under smart conditions, this is anything that was older than a year. It's going to use these different ways to show the date. So essentially I have two kind of completely mutually exclusive smart conditions. And for anything that's older than a year, it'll show up as like 10/20/2020. And for anything that's more recent than a year, it'll show up as a relative date from today, and it'll say, 3 months or 10 days. So you can have both of those right next to each other, and as long as those rules are mutually exclusive, they'll never show up at the same time. It'll always be one or the other. So that is one little piece that I have set up right there. And then next up, I've got the last played date, and I've set up the options for that with the length being short and date format being automatic, which ends up being just that kind of like 2 days or things like that. And then down here, this is where we've got the scrobble count. So for scrobble count, the default is to have an X after the number of plays. And you can see that right here it says auxiliary characters, and I have that hidden. If I were to do automatic, it would say 7x for 7 plays. What I did is I got rid of the auxiliary count, which is, it's a useful way to display it, but I'd rather refer to my scrobbles as scrobblies. And so what I did is added a blank separator, and then I added my own personal text, which just says scrobblies, which is how that then shows up on here as 4 scrobblies instead of 4x. So since I had some extra space on that line, I figured play around with that and make it more representative of how I feel about that piece of data. Finally, at the bottom, I've got audio quality here, which will show me if a song is in Dolby or lossless. It's not working right now because I am recording audio. It's not playing anything in Dolby or lossless, so I can't get it to show up, but it will show up on the bottom row underneath the 0 scrobblies here. I switched songs trying to find a way to get it to show up, but it's just not. You also should have the ability to change this to a short version. So it'll just show the Dolby symbol or that lossless symbol. Not as useful on this main screen right here because there's so much space, but you can use that down here in the mini player, which is really convenient because there's definitely a lot less space. But speaking of that, let's move on to the mini player. So with space being more limited, we definitely want to get more creative with how we display things. So yeah, I don't need nearly as much information down there, but some things I do like to see is if I have a device connected, maybe what my song's rating is, and then some kind of a visual cue to how much I've listened to a song. So we'll be using some conditional rules here to get those things set up, between conditional rules and symbols anyway. So let's start at the top. I just want basically a song title and then a representation of how many listens a song has. So in order to do this, let's go into the mini player displayed metadata. And then let's use the play symbol here. And I'm actually going to use colors to represent different different levels of plays, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a gray symbol for 3 or less plays. And these smart conditions right here, 3 or less plays will be gray. So it's like, yep, I've heard it, but it's not, it's not something that's been in my library quite a bit. And then I'm going to quickly copy a whole bunch of these and just swap out some rules to do different things. All right, so I'm going to skip a whole bunch of that. It took me a little while to set these symbols up, but here you can see I have the same symbol showing up, but each one has a different set of rules in here. So smart conditions, I've got this one for 11 through 14 plays will be green. This is probably overkill, honestly. I'll probably consolidate this later, but just to show you kind of what can happen here, I've got that set up. So this symbol now next to the artist down here will change as songs have more and more plays, essentially. So maybe I can find another song that I know has a lot of plays on here. Definitely this album. And let's pick out this one right here. And you can see that that one's green, barely, I guess. Let's take a look at this one there. That one's yellow because it's less than 10. So you can kind of set that up to quickly display what you have, built for a relationship with a particular song right there. So let's go back in here to some other settings, look at some other metadata options here. So moving on to device display. So down here in the subtitle, what I have is I've got the rating, and then before that you can see I have 3 different symbols. Those are going to each cover a different output device that I've got. So this first one right here is for anything that's kind of like AirPlay or any kind of speakers. So it's going to cover my HomePods and then my Bluetooth speaker, which is JBL. So what I have set up here is I basically set up a symbol for the metadata. Up under smart conditions, I've used the filter for output device name contains. So AirPlay covers all my HomePods, and then JBL is the name of my Bluetooth speaker. So if any of those are the output device, it'll show that symbol. You can see that I also have this one set up for my Sony headphones. I have 2 different pairs of those, and then I've got my AirPods as the last one right here. So only one of these will show up at a time, as the output device can only be one thing at a time. And then last, I like to have the rating, and I've changed the length to short. If you have it at automatic, it'll have all of the It'll have 4 stars show up, but if you change it to short, it'll do a number and then the star after it. So you can see it. It's kind of faded because I really like seeing the artwork pop. So sorry about that. But so you can see my tiny little AirPods and then the 5 stars right there. So that's how you can adjust some of the metadata in some pretty creative ways in the mini display or the mini player right there. All right. Who's sick of metadata? No one. All right, didn't think so. So let's keep digging in. We're going full speed ahead on metadata in this update. So we've long had the ability to change metadata displayed in different sections, but it's so much easier and better now. So what we're actually going to do is go into my random albums section, and you can see that I have ratings set up by default, but in such a small space like my iPhone, they take up quite a bit of room right here. So pretty much 3 spaces. It'd be like a 3.3 space star. So do I need to know if something is a 3.4 or 3.2? Not exactly. So let's take a moment here and change that rating into a symbol that at a glance can do pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to go into the settings section for this section, and under displayed metadata for albums, I'm going to set up a new set of smart rules essentially. And what I'm going to do is right here, so it says rating, I'm going to get rid of that rating and I'm going to set up my own system here so that I can have a good idea of what I'm looking at for where an album is rated without necessarily having that much space taken up. So I'm gonna get that set up and I will be right back. All right, so just took some time to get this all set up, and what I've got here under the subtitle metadata, I've set up a rule group actually, and I've titled it ratings. And inside here, I have all these different symbols set up with different ranges for ratings to cover all albums. So I've got just your run-of-the-mill kind of gray heart as anything that's less than 2.6 essentially, and then I have it gradually going higher and higher until my absolute best albums are going to be this purple and blue heart right here. So the way it looks like in here is like that, which I feel like I'm going to do some more tweaks to try to get some kind of level of consistency better. But again, it just shows you the sheer power that we have with these smart rules and some of the symbols that we can mix them with. So one of the things that would be pretty cool though is to see how long it's been since I've played an album. Now, the old school last played metadata can definitely do this, where it'll just have a description of what time it's been, but let's try and make it a little more visual. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to use a moon with some Z's on it in order to quickly at a glance see that I have not listened to something in a while. So if I search for moon, I'm going to get this little sleepy time moon right here. I'm going to leave it actually from a color standpoint, but what I'm going to do for smart conditions is add a filter for last played. And let's change the days to 1 year and in last to not in the last. And let's see if that works out here. And it does. So you can see right here, there's an album with some moons on it. And yeah, as you scroll here through here, you can see which albums it's been a while since I played. And you know what? Let's actually switch this around, and let's move this to the title here. So let's do copy, and we'll move it up here instead, and paste that there. Take it off of here since we don't need it in 2 places. And see if that looks, yep. So now it's showing up right after the title here, which is kind of cool. So really quick way to, at a glance, see what's going on with some of your music. Let's do one last thing here regarding metadata. So some or all of this is also interesting at the song level. So you can either, now you can change either what it looks like when you open albums from this specific section, and that's done right here in the displayed metadata album to songs. You can also do the same thing for anywhere there's a song list by going to the songs section right here and setting up the displayed metadata. And you can see I've already done some things right here. So this one is a little play symbol. I'll get to that in a second actually, but I already have set up this little moon for anything that it's been a while that I've listened to. And so you can see as I scroll through here, you can see the little moon next to any songs it's been at least a year. So this will show up anywhere where you see a song. If you open an album from pretty much anywhere, it should show that little moon for any songs that it's been a long time since you listened to. So just another way to visually represent some of your metadata. This video is getting a little bit long in the tooth, so let's rip through a few last features here. So if I go into the metadata here again, and let's go into songs. It's going to display metadata. There's one last thing that's actually pretty cool. There's a new smart condition, which is for now playing. So you can see that under this, the smart condition now playing is true. And what this will do is actually display a symbol on any song that you're currently listening to in place of, or as a little piece of metadata. So we've got Milky Chance right here, Feathery. Let's bring up that in my library. So if I open this up, if I scroll down, you can see that it's got, whoop, it just went away. You can see that the song is both highlighted, which you can turn on or off, but it also shows a little play symbol, which you can set up as whatever you want. And you can actually even replace the time with that symbol if you want by using some of those rules that I showed you earlier. So really cool way to see, at a glance which song is playing or do some different things with that. Real quick, we're also able to add some symbols to the section titles. So I'm using emojis on some of these, like this main playlist, that's an emoji next to it. But this one right here, this section, what I've done is actually put in a symbol for download. These are my downloaded songs or downloaded albums. So I've used a symbol and then some text, and then we have a new option, which is some brief kind of metadata things. So you can do the sorting, what type of media it is, or the items count. So in this case, you can see that it says for me, 291 albums. I've used the items count in that one. But if you switch that to the sorting, it'll say shuffled up there. You can see it back in the background here. So just at a glance, you can kind of get more familiar with how you have that stuff set up. All right, last but certainly not least, if you've stuck around, hopefully you have, this is one of my favorite features, and that's some new gestures that are added to the mini player. So what we're going to do is go down into the gestures options here, and we're going to go down to mini player. And we now have the options to do different things if we swipe left or right on this mini player. So the default is if you swipe to the right, the mini player gets super small, which looks pretty cool, to be honest. But I have always found that for me, it's kind of a pain to get back to the home screen. And sometimes it's a pain to get the search bar activated. And so you can see here, I've got swipe left and right set up to do just those things. And since the mini player is pretty much always available, I can almost always quickly get to where I want to be by just swiping on there. So I am very happy with that. That's one of these like hidden features that I'm using all the time now. So really happy that that's in there. Anyway, so that's going to wrap this video up. You can see that this 8.0 update packed in a ton of new features. I definitely encourage you to join us on Discord or on Reddit to see some of the cool things that people are doing with metadata. It's actually how I came up with a few of these ideas. But feel free to let me know in the comments if you were lost by anything on here or if you have any really awesome things that you've been able to do. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for watching.